how can people be good leaders?
Oh, look, leadership starts with, it starts with brand, right? Personal brand. And what happens in business is a lot of people get caught up in a brand they're building. So they say, right, I'm going to start a business, and they go and get their nice name and their logo, and they can create these funny things, and they get caught up in colours and business cards and websites. And what happens in this process of creating their brand, they get so stuck on that brand that they forget about their personal brand. Right? And the most important thing to me is you've got to get your personal brand right, because your personal brand never leaves you.
Hello and welcome to Trillions. I'm your host, Alyse Grace, and today I am chatting with Phillip DiBella, someone I met 8 years ago who played a huge role mentoring and inspiring me to dream big. He has a net worth of over $100 million and is known as Australia's coffee king. In 2002, he started DiBella Coffee, selling at the markets and helping cafes get established. Right before he went global, Phill sold for $47 million to Retail Food Group in 2014. On this episode, we talk about the importance of personal branding, having a clear vision, gratitude, Phil's time with Richard Branson, and much more. So let's get stuck into it. In prep for the fight, did you train with him?
Yeah, a little bit, but not a lot, not as much. He wanted to do like 5-6 sessions a week. We only did 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So, but we've trained together before, so
yeah.
Yeah, and he's a professional. There's no doubt he's a much better fighter than me. But like he said, I can fight, so it makes it easier because I know how to fight. You
look good. You look powerful, and you're moving around pretty quickly too.
Yeah, very quick. So especially when my last fight was 167 kilos. So
in this fight,
I was 90. I weighed in at 90.6.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. So at your heaviest, you were how heavy?
167.
Okay.
Point something.
167, and now you're 90 odd?
I walk around at about 92, 93, and I got down to 90.6.
Yeah.
But I'll eventually get under, to be totally lean, I'll get under 90.
Yeah. So you want to get shredded?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty shredded now.
You are?
But
let me feel those guns. Oh, they're solid.
But yeah, I'm going to get at 90.6, I had 4 abs.
Yeah. So
I'm getting there.
Yeah, just 2 more to go, or maybe 4, depending on if you want the 8-pack.
I don't want 8. I'm not going to work too hard for that.
So are you dieting? Like, what are you doing with food?
Yeah, no, dieting. So it's small food often. But I went and had that stomach surgery. So I went and had, 2 years ago, because I always talk about no different to business, right? Use the resources around you that you need. And so I researched it, looked into it, and a few people I knew went and did it. And what it was for me is I actually eat more food now than what I ever have. But so people go, oh, is that why you lost the weight? No, I lost the weight because there is no secret, right? It's true what they say. Yeah. 80% is food, 20% is exercise. Yeah. Now, in saying that, why? Because obviously the exercise is why I don't look flabby and all the rest of it. It's because I train hard, so it keeps everything toned and in definition and all the rest of it. But it's the food that makes you lose the weight, not the training. Yeah. And the food side of it is eat small, eat often. There's, I've done everything they can think about, keto this and keto that, and no carbs and proteins and Weight Watchers. I've done everything. It's eat small, eat often, and it doesn't really matter what you eat as long as you're not eating a truckload of sugar. Yeah. But eat small, eat often. Like I said, I eat more food now than I ever have, but I'm eating 6 times a day or 5 times a day. Yeah. At worst 3 times a day, whereas before I'd eat 1 meal a day. But it was like dumping, imagine a fireplace and you dump all this wood at the same time.
Just kind of floods the body.
Well, heaps about fitness. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So you've been eating more, smaller meals, exercising. What kind of exercise have you been doing?
Well, boxing training. So I had 3 types of training. So I've been doing a lot of endurance stuff to get the fitness up. And then I was doing obviously my boxing skills training, and then obviously a lot of weight stuff, to obviously, get definition and shred where you want to shred and build the muscles you want to build. And because I never used to have a really strong back or lats, and now I'm starting. So one of my goals by the end of the year is to be able to do 5 chin-ups. So I've always been very powerful in the arms and legs, but I've never been able to do chin-ups because I've never been powerful in the lats or the back, whereas now I can actually do 2 chin-ups. So
like this, underhand grip?
Yeah. So I'm working towards getting to 5
cool.
By the end of the year. So just working on the areas that is no different to business, working on the weaknesses rather than focusing on the strengths. Yeah. And you see it at the gym, everyone goes and does their upper body and then their legs look terrible, or they do their legs and their upper body looks terrible.
Or they just do their chest and they end up hunched over like this.
Well, that's right. And business is the same, right? Everyone gets caught up on their strengths and doesn't focus on their weaknesses. So that's something that I'm applying to all of self. So
do you think it's better to focus on improving things you're weak at, or does it, like, how do you because there's so many things you could choose to learn and be better at, but how do you choose what's important to focus on and what you just leave alone?
Well, for me, it's about three things. I always talk about, everyone's life is personal, professional, and family, and it really comes down to understanding what you want to be or what your vision is for each one. So what's your vision personally, professionally, and family? And then to build a plan on how you're going to achieve that. And that'll start to flush out what becomes important to you. So, to me personally, was to get health, to get fit and healthy, to be able to, it wasn't even about what my body looked like. It wasn't about clothes or it wasn't an image thing.
Yeah.
It was complete, and still isn't. It really isn't. Like, I still walk past the mirror and go, "Holy shit, is that me?"
In a good way?
Yeah, in a good way. But I still
good.
don't recognise myself.
Yeah.
Because I never saw it as an image thing. Because it never stopped me from doing things. And of course, I know I look better. I look healthier.
Look younger.
Yeah, well, totally. But it's more about how you feel. To me, it was about feeling good. Like I used to sleep 8-9 hours a day and still be tired. Now I sleep 5 to 6 hours and I feel great.
Yeah.
It was about being more active. Things like that get really difficult, like tying your shoelace, or now are just is easy. I want to learn how to surf. I was always strong, but I could never get myself up on a surfboard, and I'd probably sink it if I did before. Whereas now, I can get up very easily off the ground, and that. So I want to get into surfing when it gets warm, later. Obviously now we're heading into winter, but after that, so. Just doing things that, like, I wanted to have a fight under 92 kilos. Ian Jacobs and I talked about it for years. I was just able to finish that. So just certain things that you just take for granted. Flying economy on a plane. It had to always be business class, and now I'm happy to get on an economy seat if it's interstate or 3-hour trip. Because the economy seat's too big for me. There's just little things that you really take for granted. Not having to ask for an extension belt on a plane. And I never got embarrassed doing so, because again, I was never self-conscious, or I've always been mentally strong and secure and all the rest of it. So my motivation wasn't that. My motivation was all about personally being a better version of myself and feeling better and living longer. So that was important. So then obviously what I went about doing flushed out. And business is the same thing, and then family is the same thing. Is I set a very clear vision of where I want to be in each category, and then set out the steps of what I need to do to achieve that.
Yeah. So you focus on 3 categories?
Always, yeah.
So a lot of people in business, they get overwhelmed, especially in the beginning, with which direction do I take? They might be confused about which idea to choose, or when they do commence a business, they have marketing, or they may or may not have staff. They've got all these little intricate things that they need to do. How do you recommend they choose what to focus on and what not to focus on, to delegate? Well,
to me, I always talk about, again, it starts with vision. You've got to have a very clear vision of where you want to be and what you want your business to be. And then, and around creating that vision, which some people call purpose, some people call goals, it's all the same thing, right? It really is, what do you see? What's the destination look like? And whether that's a purpose, a vision, whatever you call it. But in able to answer the question is, you've really got to understand how you got to your vision or what your purpose is. And to me, I talk about what problem are you going to solve, or what's going to make you relevant, or if you didn't exist tomorrow, who's going to be able to take over from what you're doing. That to me really helps you set a vision that's going to be strong, achievable, and attainable, in terms of saying, well, hey, and if I use DiBella as an example, when I started DiBella in 2002, if I was going to be just another coffee company, I would have gone broke, because you could buy coffee from 1,500 people at the time. It was for me about turning a product business into a service business. The problem I was going to solve is I was going to help cafe owners make money. And then so when we set this clear vision of becoming Australia's #1 coffee company, the problem we were going to solve was to help cafe owners make money. That was going to be our USP, our point of difference, our whatever you want to call it, our differentiating fact. Everyone uses all these buzzwords and terminologies. It's very simple. What problem are you going to solve for somebody that doesn't exist right now? And it was about turning it into a service business. And then what we did and where we delegated and where we focused came out of that. And I see a lot of people put all these steps and processes in place, but without knowing what a clear destination looks like. And it's no different to me throwing you the keys to my car and saying, here, go for a drive, and you go, where? And you say, it doesn't matter. Well, you'll see most people just drive around in circles. And that happens in business.
Great analogy.
Yeah, well, it happens in business. People just don't have a clear destination of where they want to be. Therefore, the steps and what they delegate, or who they delegate or don't delegate, become all blurred. Do
you think that once you have the vision and it becomes so compelling, you just charge forward and overcome things and figure it out as you go?
Well, no, I don't believe, something that people don't realise is, and I've heard this about me, they go, Phil DiBella flies by the seat of his pants. Well, no, I don't. I measure things that many times, it's not funny. I'm strategically always planning and mapping things out, but I'm also very quick to action. So I execute very quickly. A lot of people get either caught up planning and don't execute, or they get caught up executing without planning.
So how do you maintain a healthy balance?
Well, you've got to have a balance. You've got to be able to, to plan things out, map it out, and then execute. If you don't, one or the other's going to fail. And then again, you throw in the third thing. You've got to be able to pivot. You've got to be able to, if you're going down a road and it's not right, you've got to be able to turn around and go back, go a different direction, because you can't keep doing the same thing if it's not working.
Yeah. So how do you know when something's actually not working and you should?
Well, again, it comes back to the vision. If you've got a clear vision of where you want to be and what success looks like,
you
know very quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're flying by the seat of your pants, you've got no idea until it's too late if it's not clear.
Yeah.
So clarity is simple. I mean, I talk about simplicity is where you want to be, and simplicity is the hardest thing. Humans have a great ability to complicate shit.
Yeah.
And it's just,
guilty.
it's just got to be clear. And that's why I use pen and paper a lot. I sit down, I'm not a good drawer, so I don't draw, but I map things out. I draw diagrams. It's all a part of the clarity process. It's all about, okay, what does success look like? What does failure look like? Where, is this working? Is it not working? Is this measurable? Is this not measurable? It really is about having very, very clear targets and processes and pit stops along the way of the journey, so that you can understand. And that's all then comes in about reflection and being grateful and analysing before then moving forward and rebuilding again.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned gratitude in there, which is unique. You don't hear a lot of business people talk about gratitude. How do you practice gratitude?
Well, gratitude to me is a state of reflection. So I try, and one thing I've been trying to do since turning 44 is every morning I wake up and I just sit there and say, well, what am I grateful for? And a lot of it, and I break it down to family, personal and professional. So one thing I'm grateful for family, one thing I'm grateful for professionally, and one thing I'm grateful for personally.
That's nice.
And it's just to be conscious of it. And it takes 21 days to make or break a habit, they say. So it's only been about 5 or 6 days. So, but every morning just trying to remember that to wake up and go, hang on, before I get out of bed, what are the 3 things I'm really grateful for? One in each area. And that way we're programming. And it's all about positive programming, right? It's programming our brains and our minds. And then you bring in the concept of mindset. So gratefulness is a state of mindfulness. And in order to be mindful, you've got to be able to be grateful. In order to be grateful, you've got to be able to reflect.
Yeah. Do you think some people completely lack self-awareness?
Oh, totally. I mean, I was doing a flashcast this morning that'll come out the next couple of weeks about EQ, emotional intelligence. One of the key pillars of emotional intelligence is self-awareness, is the ability to be conscious and self-aware of what's going on. And they're not aware of others, they're not aware of themselves, and therefore, they're heading into blind spots all the time.
Yeah.
And it's little things that'll show you whether somebody's aware, even down to somebody trying to walk past you, behind you, someone trying to get through and you're blocking the hallway. Like, it's just simple things like that show the amount of self-awareness people have or don't have.
Do you think the majority have it or don't have it?
Oh, I'd probably say most people don't have. They've got the self-awareness, they don't just practice it. There's a lot of ignorance that happens in the world. It's becoming a very now world, and technology hasn't helped with that, where everything's about now and everything's about we want it now. We don't have to wait. There's no patience, and the more that happens, the more we become self-indulgent. The more we become self-indulgent, the less self-aware we become.
So in a first world, how do we stay present? And Timothy Ferriss talks about, he puts himself in these very uncomfortable situations where he might camp out with no phone reception and things like that. He puts himself in those scenarios to have somewhere to go to when he feels like he's being overindulgent. How do you recommend people stay grounded in a world where everything's so
to me, it's about bring it back to basics. Like we did it this morning with the children. No technology at breakfast.
Your kids?
Yep. So
cool.
no technology at breakfast. We're going to sit around the table and have breakfast, and no one's getting on their phones, including me or my wife. No one's on the phone, because sometimes we'll just sit there and all 4 of us are on our phones doing something.
Even the kids.
Yeah, even the kids. Yeah. And that's just bringing it back to simplicity. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's Tim Ferriss and camping out, or whether it's not having technology around a table, or whether it's everyone just getting in a car and going for a drive, listening to music, whatever it is. To me, it comes back to being present, right? It comes back to being mindful and self-aware. Hard to be self-aware when your head's buried in technology, or when kids are checking out YouTube and doing whatever they do these days. You know, it really is about coming back to basics. I mean, again, that word of self-awareness, emotional intelligence is so important and so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and unlike IQ, emotional intelligence can be worked on. Just because you're, you know, emotionally intelligent today doesn't mean you will be next week.
Yeah.
Unless you constantly work on
It's
it.
like a muscle.
It is. It's a constant journey, not a destination.
Yeah, cool. I agree. I'm definitely guilty of looking at my phone before I go to sleep, the first thing in the morning, sometimes when I eat. But yeah, it's nice to eat the food and be aware of the flavors and the textures and things like that. Something I learned when I did a meditation retreat. Of course, there's no technology, and yeah, it was incredible how different the food tasted after a week of being present and conscious of the food.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So with your kids, you said that no technology at the table. I'm not sure about what stage in your journey you had your children, but I vaguely remember it was, you know, when you're on your way to you know, living quite a good life and comfortable, successful life where you've got excess income, you don't have to worry about the basics. So how do you keep your kids, you know, aware of, sometimes they say that if you don't grow up in like a poor family or you don't have those struggles as a kid, you don't have that hunger later in life. Yeah. So how are you instilling good things with your kids to help them?
Well, I'd say right off the bat, I mean,
successful.
You don't know what you don't know. And if you know, obviously I don't know what my parents knew. And what I mean by that, even though I come from working class family where my dad used to earn $450 a week, I still didn't have to walk 5 kilometers to get water. So let's start from that point, right? We don't know what we don't know. So the short answer, and anyone can tell you any other bullshit, but the kids are not going to know what I know or went through, and just like I'm not going to go and what I don't know, and I didn't have to go through what my dad did. So let me quantify it. My dad says, you guys go and pay for water from a supermarket now. You'll buy bottles of water. We used to have to walk 5 kilometers to go and get water. We didn't just turn on a tap. There was no such thing. Yeah. So back in, you know, when he was a kid in Italy, they had to go and get their bottles, walk 5 kilometers, return trip with fresh water from the springs. Whereas in Australia, we can just turn on the tap. But we don't. We choose to go and buy water. Yeah. So you follow that process. Then you then come down, and yet I grew up in a family that earned $450 a week. That was it.
Was that a lot for back then?
Well, no, it wasn't.
Really?
It was peanuts. But we had the best food on the table. We had everything, but we never went on holidays, all this sort of stuff, because we didn't live in a fancy house. That my parents had never bought a brand new car. It was always second-hand car, because something's got to give, right? Now you fast forward to me, where I've done well. Whilst my kids have to make their bed, put their clothes away, they have to, help clean up, they have to do stuff around the house, all the rest of it. They still have cleaners. They have a nanny to help them with their stuff. As much as we make them do stuff and we tell them that nanny is like your big sister, not your slave, they're still not going to go through what I went through, because I had to wash the car, cut the grass. My kids don't have to do that. Yeah. Now, I believe their kids won't go through what they're doing. However, what is to me important and fundamental that doesn't change is a constant vocabulary and talking with your children. Sitting down or making sure you get your kids involved in things. So if I'm cooking a barbecue, I get my children, who are now 11 and 9, they help.
Oh, nice.
They help prep, they help carry things out to the barbecue, they help, clean up after the barbecue. I get them involved in things. It's talking to them, conversating with them, explaining things, why things work, why things don't work. We still go camping. Of course, our camping looks a little bit different to what I would have gone camping if it was with my parents. Yeah. My parents never did camping. It's not so much what it looks like. To me, it's the process. Yeah. So spending that time talking, communicating, and doing the best that we can, because we've all got different resources now, and just like our children, as they grow up, will have different resources to others. The one thing that we hope never changes is the ability of conversation, is that people stop, talk, and with conversation comes support, understanding, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, empathy, all these things. But if you're not having a conversation, you can't display or understand any of those principles.
So how do you teach your kids this with conversation?
Well, I think you lead by example. Sitting in a car and having a conversation with my wife versus sitting in a car and I'm driving, listening to music and she's on her phone. Or, we drove back from Kingscliff yesterday and we sat there for 2 hours having a conversation in the car and the kids were listening. Yeah, nice. So I think you lead by example. I mean, you are, as Jim Collins says, the sum of the 5 people. Now, it might not be 5, it might be 2, it might be 3, it might be 10, but you are influenced by what goes on around you, and I think it starts with, you know, not this whole, you know, do as I say as I do. It's got to be lead by example, be that influencing party. So, you know, the kids see you have conversations, they see you lead by example, and hopefully that flows on to them.
Yeah. It's interesting. I can't comment really because I don't have kids, but I've nannied kids, and it's incredible teaching them things and how absorbent they are, like a little sponge, but also how much they teach me. Even as a nanny, 100%. They've tested my patience, and they've reminded me of how I used to be as a kid, and things even that I do as an adult that perhaps I should tweak or change. So yeah, kids are cool. Kids are very cool.
Well, that's another part of reflection, right? Is that you're reflecting upon yourself, but if you didn't have that ability to stop and reflect, you're not going to learn anything, right? You're just going to go through the motions. So I always say, you know, the best learnings are right in front of us. We've just got to be open to it. You know, I like to just sit back in a room sometimes and watch and observe, and whether that's my children, whether that's workers, whether that's colleagues, whether it's just the general public, I like looking, observing, watching, because that's where you do your best learning. It is, and you do get, but you see, you know, you're people watching to be judgmental, or you're people watching to observe and see what behaviours.
Well, 80% is body language, so you can read a lot about people. I love going out with my partner and watching people when we go out for dinner, or and saying, oh, those two look like they're on a date. What do you think these two are doing? Just reading their body languages. It's
you're exercising your brain, right? It's a form of brain exercise.
Yeah.
And you're keeping it constant, you're keeping it going. So, you know, I'm a big believer in that. And that's then goes on to be creativity, right? And that's one thing that we've got to make sure we don't take away, no matter what technology is available, from our, you know, breeding any children, whether they're your children, your friends' children, your nieces, your nephews, whatever, your next door neighbours, is encouraging kids to be creative, encouraging them to think, encouraging them to speak, encouraging them to reflect, the ability to have you know, ill feelings. Not every kid's going to be happy all the time. Let them go through the negative feelings. Let them build resilience. Well, no, you know, those that are normally end up, you know, unfortunately, having, you know, creating suicide later on in life because they don't know what, you know, not being happy looks like. I mean, Harvard did a study on it.
They think that they have to be happy all the time.
Correct. So that whole resilience and going on that journey is important, I think. You know, we all want the best for our kids, and we all want the best for the people we love and care most about. But we've all, part of that, to me, wanting the best is enabling them to understand and deal with the feelings when they're not always positive. You know?
Yeah, the hardship. So on that note of hardship, when has there been a time when you've been really tested and you felt like at the time that you failed? So tell me about one of your best failures and tell me about the failure and how at the time you thought it was the worst thing, but actually it turned out to be one of the biggest blessings in your life.
Oh, look, when I, probably one that really stands out, which was the backbone of DiBella's success, was I was working for a place, you know, called Cosmopolitan Coffee for 9 years.
I remember
and I loved it. You know, and I loved it. I was there for 9 years, and 7 years of it was fantastic. Loved it. I got to learn a lot. I was working in the kitchen at part-time when I was at uni, and then I ended up, you know, building a whole sale division and the rest of it. And I really enjoyed it. I learned how to manufacture coffee, learned all about coffee, learned about, you know, put into effect what I loved, which was business and marketing, and it was very successful. And then, like everything else, things get to a tipping point, and the tipping point was, well, do you stay here and build it for someone else who's not giving back, or do you go and do your own thing? And at the time, as much as the owner was encouraged to, hey, you should be looking at Phillip coming on as a partner or giving a percentage or incentivizing him, it was no. And at this point, it's when he became quite nasty. So it was like, from somebody who was really treating me really well and gave me this opportunity, and I've always been brought up to be a very grateful person by my parents and very respectful. So when the person goes from treating you amazing for 7 years and looking after you like a son that he never had, to then going against you and really treating you badly, that was a real tough time, especially emotionally, because I'm quite a soft person emotionally. It was something that I sort of not experienced before. And that was tough. But then from that came okay, well, this is not going to turn. So what's next? And this is where the resilient Phill, the visionary Phill kicked in, and said, no, well, I'm going to go out and do my own. What's the worst possible thing that can happen? And that's when I went out. And of course, at the time, which people know now, you know, Jana, who wasn't my wife at the time and we weren't even dating, she was the one that said, go and do it for yourself. And it was actually her father that I worked for.
Yeah,
so
wow.
it was him that treated me so well for 7 years and then treated me like crap for 2 years. And it was his daughter that said, well, it's time for you to go out and do this on your own, because he's not going to change. He's not going to respect you and appreciate you. So you need to go and do what you want to do for yourself. Don't sell your skill to anybody else. And then obviously, as everyone knows, I ended up marrying his daughter, and we built Australia's #1, specialty coffee company.
Yeah.
So that was a time that it was really emotionally was hard to deal with, and it was at a time when most people would go, "Oh shit, do I just stay here and keep getting kicked in the guts, or do I go from the fry pan to the deep fryer and work for somebody else?" Whereas I made that and bit the bullet and said, "No, I'm going to start my own coffee company," and that was in 2002.
That's a brave move.
Brave, but I had good people around me. I obviously I was comfortable with my worst possible scenario. I didn't sell my house that I'd worked hard to pay off at the time to invest in it. I started with $5,000, and most people know the story. I had some backstop. So to me, they talk about entrepreneurs being risk takers. They're not. Entrepreneurs are visionaries that are resilient, totally, and they're very calculated risk takers. They know exactly what they're prepared to lose and what they're not prepared to lose.
So at that time, did you know that the little small businesses and small to medium businesses needed your help? Was that your vision from the start, or was your vision just to create good quality coffee? Because it sounds like you're very passionate about coffee.
Oh, look, I'm more passionate about people and business than what I am about coffee.
Yeah.
And that's something I can say now. At the time, I thought it was about coffee, as we're all drummed in, especially at marketing school. It's all about product, Whereas to me, I advocate this and have done so for the last 15 years, it's not product that's going to make you #1. It's actually people. Mm-hmm. Your skills with people, your ability with people, your way to be able to design a company that is externally facing, that is so customer centric that nobody else can compete with you. And that is what we did with DiBella. We built a company so customer centric that no one could compete. And I mean, we've got all the accolades to go for it. But the bottom line, the reason I can be arrogant in that statement, is that we became the biggest in the country, which I never thought we would, because so many cafe owners wanted that. It was a niche that we feel that nobody else did. And that was to help them with their business. I mean, all we did, right, in terms of coffee, was supply them coffee. But what we did for their business was we helped them service their coffee machine, train their staff, introduce them to better suppliers that would give them better product for cheaper. We did all of this stuff at no extra price except transacting a bag of beans.
Yeah.
How we got paid was selling them coffee. So it wasn't even about the coffee we sold them. Of course, the coffee was sourced directly, ethically from farms, and it was great quality, and it didn't need sugar, and it blended well with milk. But it wasn't the product that led the way. It was actually what the organisation stood for. What was the brand of excellence that we created, that we now talk about greatness is in the detail. DiBella stands for greatness in the detail. While others want to make great coffee, we wanted to service our customers with greatness. And now, with me being back at DiBella, that's what we're taking the business back from. So from the 2 years that I was not in the business, it's now going back to greatness in the detail. It's back to being customer centric and fulfilling the needs of a customer.
It's actually genius, because the more you help them build their business, the more beans they buy, but you're also creating a good relationship and practicing your people skills.
Totally.
So with your people skills and your focus on people, how have you created your own business people centered? And for those that don't have a team to lead, how can they be good leaders? They don't have kids or a team. How can people be good leaders?
Oh, look, leadership starts with, it starts with brand, right? Personal brand. And what happens in business is a lot of people get caught up in a brand they're building. So they say, right, I'm going to start a business, and they go and get their nice name and their logo, and they again create these funny things, and they get caught up in colors and business cards and websites. And what happens in this process of creating their brand, they get so stuck on that brand that they forget about their personal brand. Right? And the most important thing to me is you've got to get your personal brand right, because your personal brand never leaves you. So like DiBella's a great example. I built from scratch the DiBella Coffee company. I then sold it. I'm now back working in it. I don't own it. I'm working back in it. And of course, I'm very well incentivized to be back. But DiBella Coffee, the brand, is completely different to Phil DiBella, the brand.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason that it is so different, and the reason why DiBella Coffee became so big, was because I always worked on my personal brand. And then I took that one step further. As I built from a staff of 0 to a staff of over 100, I cared about their personal brand. And I make sure that everyone that turns up to work and works under the DiBella Coffee brand, even to this day now, is focused on their personal brand. And if they're not focused on building their personal brand, well, then I'm not focused on having them in the business.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's their brand that's so much more important than the DiBella brand. And the more focus I put on their brand, the more excellence they deliver for the DiBella Coffee brand. And it's something that most people find it hard to understand, but those of it that have followed that advice and gone on and done it, I keep, to this day, I get phone calls and emails and saying it was the best advice I was given, was stop worrying about my brand and start worrying about people as a brand.
Yeah.
And the moment you start worrying about your team's personal brand, you watch the magic they create for your company brand.
Do you mean creating something for themselves in terms of a business, or
no, creating their brand, their personal brand? What does brand you stand for? So I say to people, what do you want to be known for? You know, and there's different tips around that, but it's about what do you want to be known for as a person. So if I said to you, hey Alyse, what's your brand? What do you stand for? Hey, professionally I stand for this, or hey, personally I stand for this.
Yeah.
You know, a brand is another way. What do people say about you when you walk out of the room?
It's a good question.
You know, not when you're in the room. What do they say about you when you walk out of the room? Is what is your... And I'll tell you, people aren't going to say, oh, Phil's the most likable guy and we love him dearly and he's nice to everyone. No, but what they'll say is Phil's authentic. He'll tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And if you don't want the truth, don't ask him.
Yeah.
But vice versa. I say to people, I want you to be as honest with me as I am with you.
I think honesty, if you're not honest with people and you sugarcoat things all the time, they can't grow. Because one thing I learned at university with the communication cycle is that there's a feedback loop. And part of that feedback loop, feedback is the last part of the communication cycle, and feedback can either be positive or negative. But if it's positive, usually it's just reinforcing something you're already doing. So how can you improve? If it's negative, it's usually you need to do this or more of this or less of that, or touch up your appearance here or there. Whatever it is, it's usually negative. And if you don't have that negative feedback, you can't learn. So
totally.
Yeah.
Or you're living in a false economy. You know, everyone's taught, this whole concept of political correctness. We're gone mad.
Oh my gosh.
We've gone mad. Like we can't associate
rainbow
with a
sheep.
gender. Well, you are a gender.
I'm offended then because it's a rainbow.
Yeah. Well, you're an agenda. You're a gender, a male or a female. Like, yeah, okay, you can be transitioning, fine, but you're a male or you're a female. There's none of this. You can't say I'm a Catholic. Well, you are. You're a Catholic, you're a Muslim, you're atheist, whatever you are, it doesn't matter. But pick one, right?
Yeah.
And just own and take authenticity over it. Like,
I think as a society, people who don't want to put themselves in a box, I think it's part of the problem with depression. People have too many options that they can't decide on one thing. So even with their fucking gender, they're confused about their gender. So
well, totally. It's like when I was overweight, people go, oh, you're fat. Yeah, I am. Tell me next thing. That's how brazen I was. I mean, that wasn't a self-defense mechanism. That was, that's the truth. I'm overweight.
Yeah.
You want to call it fat, overweight, fatty boomstick, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really worry me. I'm that comfortable in myself because you know what? You didn't make me fat. I made myself fat. Right? No one tied me up and fed me food for 10 years. And it's getting to that place where you're so comfortable with yourself that you can just be that honest. And the same with business where people go, oh, you can be aggressive. No, I'm not aggressive. I'm passionate. No, I'm not arrogant. But I'm vocal about what I believe in, and no, I'm not always right, and I'm happy to be told when I'm not right.
I think business people really cop it. Hey, like if they give an opinion that's passionate, then it's like, oh, he's a bad person. But anybody can be. We all have all the traits. We're all angry sometimes, beautiful and happy the next. We're all assholes, and we're loving and caring. Like we all are everything. Well, nobody's positive all the time.
Well, you know what? What happens most of the time is people call into their lives what they're pointing out in themselves. So when they're pointing things out about other people, it's a deflection from themselves. Rather, I've always been, lucky enough to be surrounded by people that said, think, even down to my dad when I was growing up, look at what you're doing first before you worry about anybody else. Are you being the best you can be before you're worrying about anybody else? So I'm, and the Italians, well, the Sicilians more so, which is the southern part of Italy. Yeah, well, we're all Italian, but Sicily's the southern part of it. They're really renowned for minding their own business. Like the Sicilians will always say, mind your own business. What's it to you?
Yeah.
And they're also a lot more in your face, the Sicilians. Why? I mean, if I had to guess, it's more because it's more villagey, more poorer part of Italy. They're really back to basics. So they're a lot more honest. They're a lot more community focused. They don't stick their nose in other people's business. If they've got a problem with someone, they tell them. And, and this is what I've found from even visiting the homeland back. And even to this day, you see them there. They either mind their own business, or if they've got a problem, they tell people.
Yeah.
There's none of this political correctness and all the rest of it. It is what it is,
Yeah. So it's just like in China when I was living there, the Chinese translation is they use the very specific words in English. So they would tell me sometimes, "You're looking fat today," and or "You're not very nice," or "You're so beautiful." They were just very direct.
Yeah.
And I really liked that because I knew where I stood. I knew who didn't really like me, who liked me. If somebody had a problem, they raised it very directly, and that's the translation from their own language, which was cool. Yeah. Well, with your upbringing, and were you born in Italy or were you?
No, I was born in Australia.
In Australia?
Yeah, my brother and sister were born in Italy. I was first generation born here in Australia.
Okay, you're the youngest of three.
Yeah, youngest of three.
And what was it like growing up for you in Australia? Did you grow up in Brisbane?
Yeah, I grew up in Brisbane. I had a good upbringing. My brother and sister are older. My brother's 13 years older. My sister's 11 years. So they were good older siblings. They got married young, so I didn't, they were, when my brother got married, I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
So my sister got married, I think I was 11 or something. So, I was quite young. But I had a lot of cousins, a lot of older cousins, a couple of young cousins my age. I'm the second youngest out of all the cousins. So we were growing up with a really good family. Mum and dad, like I said, Dad would always have me with him, whether he's out picking fruit or whether he was making wine, or if Mum was cooking, I was there with them. No, he used to make bottle his own wine at home.
Oh, nice.
Just for his own consumption.
What did he do for work?
He used to work at the Royal Brisbane Hospital, so he was a yardsman there, working in there for 26 years. So, it was just good values, and that's something that I find myself now talking a lot about, me and my wife, and we talk about it with our kids, and you bring it into business, personal, family. It doesn't change. It's values-based. It really is about identifying and aligning with people's values. So I find that people that irritate me, their values don't align with me. Now, I don't get angry about it. I just, what we call affectionately detach.
Yeah.
If your values don't align with me, well, then we'll affectionately detach.
Agree to disagree.
Totally. I don't need to argue with you. I don't need to have an argument or a punch up with you. It's just simple. You go your way, I go my way. We say hello when we see each other. We just don't align. So you're what we call affectionately detach. And you'll find that people, when you're arguing with someone or you're not getting on with them, who, regardless, it could be your partner, your children, it's because your values aren't aligning. Now, of course, some things you can change quite quickly and, and they're temporary, and some things just become that you'd never align. Yeah. But that's something that I'm constantly vigilant about is surrounding yourself with people that have similar or complementing values. Yeah.
Yeah, my partner doesn't have the identical values that I have. I mean, her highest value is obviously health and fitness, and my highest value at the moment is business and building our business together, and then finances. I'm the accountant of the two, and she's not really that way inclined, and sometimes it frustrates me that she's not money minded as much as I am, but then I go back to remembering that health is her highest value. So if I can link what I want to her highest values, then I can get what I want, and they can vice
align,
versa.
Right? Well, they can align. She can have the value of health and the rest of it, and you've got the value of obviously security and finance, and one can create the other. They can work together, and that's where you find that common ground of where your values align. They don't have to be the same value, they just need to align. Yeah,
that's right. Well, the finances by the good food.
Yeah, well, if you valued, and where you'd have a problem using that example is if you valued money and security and finances, and she valued shopping and extravagant lifestyles, that's where you're going to clash. Right? But I mean, you can easily align your value with her value where they complement each other.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely.
And vice versa.
That's right. Oh, so on that note, actually, of finances, now that you obviously sold DiBella to Retail Food Group, 2 questions on that. So how did you know that RFG was the right choice? So, I mean, I'm sure you were approached before then by other companies. How did you know that it was the right company to buy you, plus the right time? And then secondly, how do you invest your funds? How do you invest your money?
So timing was all about leaving a gap in the ceiling. So I got to spend a week on Necker Island at Richard Branson's house in the Caribbean and spent 2 nights with him. And we had some great discussions over that time. And one of the things that we really talked about was, when do you know when to sell out of businesses? And he always said, well, you've got to leave enough of a gap in the ceiling for the next party. Otherwise, if you build the business to its full potential, you don't get what it could really be worth. There's no opportunity value. So always know to leave something in it. For DiBella, we'd become the biggest in Australia, and it was ready to go global. So that the part in the ceiling for DiBella was the global. So it was ready to go global, which then led to who do we sell it to? Well, there was no selling it to. I had people chasing me from all different walks of life, from private equity to drink companies and all the rest of it, putting offers in left, right and centre. To me, it was to align with an organisation that wanted to go global and were already in the business, and that was Retail Food Group. They're already a coffee business in such. They manufacture coffee for their franchisees. They're global. And they wanted to look at buying something, which, you know, given what's happening of recent times, it's great that they did buy their first ever business that had nothing to do with franchise.
Yeah.
So the timing was perfect, and the alignment was perfect.
Did they approach you?
Well, they had approached me a couple of years before, and then when it was time to move, I got my guys to approach them. Because I knew that they were interested a few years prior, but it just wasn't the right timing. So, you know, we sat down, we noted out a deal, and it was fantastic. And everything aligned. It aligned beautifully. The right people worked on the deal for us from BDO. And it went from, you think about it, it went from start to finish in 13 weeks over Christmas. That's just unheard of.
That's quite smooth.
And it was the biggest transaction in the country in this space of coffee. You know, so it was really, you know, everything aligned and it went really well. And now, of course, opportunity. And one thing that entrepreneurs do well is they know how to identify opportunity and capitalize on it. And 2 years later, after effectively exiting, I've been offered the role to go back to head it up globally. Yeah. So now I get to actually, you know, come back in the lead role of taking the company global. Which I'm excited for and committed to for at least the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
You know, at 44, I can't retire yet. So you know. Now the second part of the question, what do you do with funds? Well, what I did along the way, it's a bit of the McDonald's stories. We bought properties. So we, you know, as we were expanding, we put the money back into the business, and so you know, we built up a good property portfolio.
DiBella owns property.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So we, you know, we own property over the place, and we've also invested in some startups. You know, to keep what they call, you know, call it our superannuation, is obviously, but our property stuff's our fallback. I mean, I can not work a day in my life and just live off that if we wanted to with the family. But obviously, we always believe in tomorrow better than today, and today better than yesterday. So, you know, it's all about just moving forward, but enjoying life. You know, doing our bit for community. We've obviously got some charitable stuff that we do and always have. You know, we've invested a bit, so we spend a bit, we invest a bit, we pay a lot of tax, keep the economy running. You know, so, you know, yeah, let's just say we do more than our fair share in all areas of the community. You know. But again, I'm not complaining. I'd like them to spend my tax dollars a bit better. Yeah, that's the only complaint I'd have.
I know you're quite political, and you have strong opinions for how you think the country could be run better, and I think a lot of people do. What would you ever run for prime minister, or would you get into politics?
No, it's not. You got to know what you're good at, and you got to know what you're not good at. And I would not be good in politics. I'm better on the outside of politics.
An Italian in politics.
Well, I've done a lot of consulting. I've done a lot of consulting. I've done, you know, I've worked with and still do with some Lord Mayors and obviously premiers and even past prime ministers. I've consulted to, worked with, sat down, chatted, advised, given them my thoughts, opinions. But me in politics, I'm never say never, but it's not an aspiration in the near future, that I can assure you. One person can't make a difference. I always say one person can't turn a ship, right?
Yeah.
It's all about, you need a team, and politics is disheartening at the moment because the minority with the loudest voice is the winning parties. And to me, it's all about strong opposition, and it's no different to business. We know we're in a good political space as a country when our opposition is strong, and unfortunately right now it's all about who don't we want in government versus who do we want in government.
It's true.
That's what people vote for. And if you think about the 80s and 90s when Australia was really supercharging, didn't matter which side of politics was in, it was all about strong opposition. So whenever the Liberal Party were in, the Labor Party was very strong. Whenever the Labor Party were in, the Liberal Party were very strong. So strong opposition breeds good government. Just like business. I would not have built DiBella Coffee to be what it was if I didn't have strong competition.
Yeah.
There were some amazing coffee companies, and still is, some amazing coffee companies. And that's what makes you work harder if you want to be number one. And if you become number one, it's because you are number one of a great bunch of people, because there's great competition. Now, that's what's disheartening about politics, is that we don't have good competition. And so therefore we're not in a good space in politics in this country. You know, and then you throw in the other thing about us being a bunch of hypocrites. They want us to have low unemployment, but they charge you payroll tax to employ more people. They want people to open their own business and aspire to open their own business, but the government takes a quarter of what you make when you sell it. There's
That's
that
insane.
many things that are just crazy, fringe benefit. And what's sad is that a lot of people don't know this. So, when I had 110 employees, I say to them, that every time I take you to the football game or I buy you a car, I've got to pay an extra tax on that. What
Really?
do you mean? Yeah, and it's called fringe benefits tax.
Yeah.
So the country wants you to look after your workers. By law, we have to look after our workers, right? But when you look after them, they charge you an extra tax.
Yeah.
When you employ more people, they charge you an extra tax. So that is why, and that's where I'm very vocal, is that forget what your beliefs are. You can't argue the facts, and the facts are we're a country of hypocrisy. You can't talk about it how we want you to employ more people and then penalise you for employing more people.
Yeah.
We can't say we want you to look after your staff and then penalise you for looking after your staff.
Yeah.
That's hypocrisy. And that's why, politics is a really, really bad place at the moment because, the minority and most of the people that are vocal don't understand any of this. They talk about, business owners should be taxed. Well, the business owners, if you take the government out of play.
The business owners are under a microscope.
Well, the business owners are the ones that employ you. So if you you either work for government or you work for a business owner.
That's right.
Now, if you take the government away, who do you work for?
Yeah.
So why would you want to attack the business owners when they're the ones that are giving the employment out? So if you actually look after the business owners so that they can look after the people, you're going to have a better economy.
People be happier, they stay in jobs longer.
Right. And it's not, that's people say, oh, that's wise. Well, no, it's not. Just look at what the countries around the world that do look after their people. The companies, the governments that look after business owners, right, are the ones where the business owners look after their people.
Yeah.
Right? Because unless the government wants to employ everybody in the country, which would be a sad state of affairs, then, you keep attacking those business owners. And it doesn't matter what size. From people that employ one person to people that employ 1,000 people, they're all employing somebody. And the moment they employ somebody, they're doing their bit for society.
That's right. Well, actually, they're doing their bit for society before they employ anyone because they're providing a service or a goods and they're creating something that brings value to the marketplace.
Totally.
So even without employees. All right. This is a question from Tim Ferriss. I've been listening to a lot of him lately, and he's great at the podcasting. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere in the world, and it would say something to broadcast to the world, either metaphorically or written in text, what would it say and why?
Don't be a hypocrite.
Is that just coming off the back of the
100%, 100%, or it would say, the whole thing was, it says, don't do as I say, say as I do.
Or something like that. Yeah.
It's really about don't be a hypocrite. Like, it really is, or it'd be, how are you being in service to somebody today? Because what we've forgotten about is to be in service to people, and that's something. And Bob Berg wrote a good book called The Go-Giver, where it talks about how to be in service to others, how to actually be in a space of giving. And you find that and whether that's time, whether that's advice, whether that's money, whatever it is how are you going to be in service to somebody else? And I think in a world of where everybody's making it more about them, right, and I use a lot of, because I love sitting back and people watching, I spoke before, and I travel the world for work. You look at India, China, USA and Australia, and the one thing that Australia has over all those countries is because we are a smaller population, we actually still do care for each other a bit more.
It's like a bit of more of a country town vibe here in Australia.
But we don't want to become like it is in India when it becomes the way we drive, where there is no system. China, there is no system. They drive everywhere, anywhere.
That's
they
right.
beep. They crash into each other and keep driving. No one cares.
They actually, when they run over people in China, they actually, if they run them over and they're still alive, they reverse back over them to make sure they're dead. Because if the government finds out who did it, then they're liable for life for this person. Yeah. It's crazy.
Just, well, that's what I'm saying. We don't want to get, and that's an extreme, right? But we don't want to get to that place.
Extreme.
We don't want to get to that space. We want to get to the place. But again, if we don't start taking check and start, being conscious and of ourselves and going, hey, this is what we don't want to be. Let's make sure we're not building little blocks, because it's that whole 1 degree of separation. 1 degree for a day means nothing. 1 degree for a year means a lot, and 1 degree for 10 years, we're off track. And you can see that, this country is becoming more self-indulgent, more selfish. It's losing its in-service attitude. And you just have to go to a retail store these days, or you just have to walk into a place. I mean, I use hospitality as an example.
Oh, so many restaurants providing average service.
Yeah, and you know why they're doing average service? Because the public want them paid penalty rates. And I heard, and it was funny.
We have one of the highest incomes of the minimum wage in the world.
100%. Now, I know we're just on the back of Easter, and I saw somebody abuse a cafe owner on Saturday down at where we were, Coolangatta, in a coffee shop down there in a shopping centre. And this lady said, "What do you mean I've got to wait 15 minutes for a coffee?" And she was going to town. And the lady, who was a lot older lady, turned around and said, "Well, let me tell you without getting into politics. 10 years ago, I could employ 10 people to work today. Now I can only afford to employ 4. So instead of getting your coffee in 3 minutes, you're going to have to wait 15, unless you want to be charged $20 for a coffee, which then I can employ 10
Express,
people."
Yeah.
And this lady just looked at her like she had no idea. And that's part of the hypocrisy I was talking about. When you're advocating, right, and nobody endorses low wages, not me. However, know your numbers, right? A cafe owner, restaurant owner cannot afford to pay more than 35%. Anyone can't afford to pay more than 35% of their takings in wages, whereas currently wages without penalty rates are 40 to 45%.
Wow.
So then you throw penalty rates in, unless you want to pay $20 for a coffee, they've got to operate with less staff.
Yeah, that's true.
So be careful what you're advocating for. And this is what I was talking about, the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
We want quick service, but we don't want to pay for it.
I'm more than happy to pay a penalty rate on a public holiday for somebody to open their doors and be there when it's a holiday and serve me food or a coffee.
And you know what everyone's answer to that? We pay 10%. Well, guess what? 10% doesn't cover the wage. A dishwasher on a public holiday is on $50 an hour.
That's insane. Washing dishes.
Again, it's knowledge. So ignorance is bliss in this country.
Yeah.
We're becoming a country of ignorance, and this is why I say, don't be hypocritical. Be careful what you ask for.
We have it so good here too.
Well,
it's very comfortable down here in Australia, away from the war zones.
You spend time
and
in China, so you understand the difference, right? And where there's rich, and poor.
Oh yeah,
there's no middle class.
The contrast
and
is
unfortunately, Australia, if we don't choose governments right and all the rest of it, and demand better governing from anyone, we're going to have the same. We're going to head to the same space. We're going to have, the rich are the rich and the poor are the poor, and you get rid of a middle class, and it's the middle class that keep the economy ticking.
Yeah.
Right. So, because the rich, you'll see them. When we're talking rich, the big corporations of that take their money offshore, they're not putting money back into the country. Yeah, they're employing people. Yeah. Right, which is great, but the middle class is where it's at.
They know the tax rate, so they're very strategic about things, and they're still able to do that. So why wouldn't they? Well,
they know how to use the system, and if the system, so it's not their fault. They're going to, and everyone does it. Everyone in the country is going to use the system to their advantage. So change the system.
Yeah.
Right. Change the system. And I've sat there with many a politician and said, why don't we tax people for every dollar that leaves the country? Then everybody gets taxed if they're taking money out of the country. Any dollar that leaves Australia. Does. That's right. India does it. China does it. Let's tax people for taking money out of the country. Yeah. Not, it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, I sent money to New Zealand to build a house in New Zealand. I didn't get taxed for it. Yeah. No, I don't think that's right. Doesn't matter that it was to my benefit. I still don't think it's right. It shows that I'm not a hypocrite. Yeah. Right? I'm not a hypocrite. And I'm talking millions. I took millions of dollars to New Zealand to build a house. I didn't get charged $1 in tax.
It's a beautiful house.
Yeah, but I didn't get charged $1 in tax. Now, this is me knowing that I'm not a hypocrite, because I should have paid tax on that. Right? Just like everyone else that takes money out of this country should pay tax on that. Yeah. But no, we don't, simple things like that don't happen. So, this is again backing up that statement of what I said before, is don't be a hypocrite. Yeah. Don't ask for one thing and then ask for a different thing from somebody else.
Or lead by example as well. Oh, heavy topics, but it's good chat. It's really good chat. So, what else, Phil? I think we've covered everything. Tell us about some lighter topics. So tell us about your car. So I'm a big car person. I'm not sure about you. I feel like you are, being Italian, and you've had some cool cars in your day. So walk us through your physical rewards, like your beautiful property in New Zealand and your cars. Why did you buy them? Are they representations of success? And
look, to me, it's all about. I grew up with family that never owned a brand new car. So it was never a known thing, but I loved cars. It was, is it a passion? Not really. But I do love nice cars, always have. I don't buy them because they're a symbol of status. I don't buy them because they define who I am. I enjoy them. I enjoy looking at them. I enjoy driving them. That's my why. Same with the house in New Zealand. It could have been bigger than what it is. It's not. It's beautiful, but it's a representation of what my wife and I wanted. And we wanted something different. We wanted something unique, and it ended up winning House of the Year in New Zealand. Now, it's not because of its size, even though it's quite big. It's not a monstrosity. It's just pretty cool and unique and different. And I've always like things like that. Like cars, the same thing. I mean, I've got a Bentley. It's unique. It's different. It's custom built. I don't, but it's a representation of me, which I suppose is that I like things to be different. I like to do things a little bit different.
Someone I met recently once said, he has a McLaren's, and he says that a car is an extension of your personality.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there probably is. I mean, but I'm not possessive about things. I mean, I jump in any of my cars in no shoes on or thongs or shorts. You don't have to be dressed a certain way.
Yeah.
If somebody's sensible and they want to drive the car, I'll let her drive them as long as they're over a certain age, obviously because of insurance. I don't get. To me, they're not. They're possessions, but they're not. They can be replaced.
Yeah. What was the first car you bought? Obviously, you worked hard in the business. You started with 5,000. Things started turning out well for you. What was the first major reward that you got for yourself? It might not have been a car, but
look, the first major award I bought, and everyone is the thing that I got around my neck, not the one I've got now. This is a diamond version, but first major award I ever bought in 2005 was it's the same charm I've got now, but not with the diamonds in it. It's a sun. So it's made by Bulgari. And it's representative of a sun, of sunshine, brightness, whatever you want to call it, which is also a nice symbol of Sicily. Is the same is the famous sun, but that would be the most extravagant thing that I bought early on, and then obviously I bought cars later on, and I've been fortunate enough to own all sorts of cars. And always had for the last probably 7 or 8 years had 2 cars that I've always had myself. But again, they're not, if I had to go back to a basic car tomorrow, I would. I mean, if that's what needed to happen, that's what happens. I mean, I don't get attached to things like that. To me, they're not, the possessions aren't that. I mean, even houses, nice houses, this, that, yeah. But as long as you've got a house, you're living somewhere, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we all go away. Some, depending religion aside, we're born alone, we go alone, we go in a box. Again, subject to religion and what you believe in. But they're not going to throw a car in the coffin with me, right, or my house. So
they could, but
I'm quite grounded with stuff like that. They're not, possessions don't define who you are.
Yeah.
They might be an expression of your personality. Then obviously
it probably makes the driving experience a little bit nicer, but I'm with you. I like the engineering that goes into them and the fact that they're hand built and the thought that goes into them, and I think that's really cool that somebody's put that much thought into a single thing. It's like buying a coffee from you versus instant coffee, right? It's the same with a nice 100%. Car, and your coffee is
it's about
amazing,
brand, right? And people get attached to different things, and this was talking about brands. Some people like Ferrari, some people like Holdens, some people like Ford, some people like Rolls Royce, some people like Bentleys. I mean, everyone's different. Clothes are different, cars are different, but everything comes down to brand. Everyone's attached emotionally to different brands for different reasons. So that's important. But again, I say they don't define you. The clothes you wear, the watches you wear, the wine you drink, the cars you drive, they don't define a person. To me, the purity of someone's heart, the authenticity of them, that's what defines a person. What's going on between their heart, their instincts and their head is something that I always talk about, that mind, body, soul. That's the combination of what defines a person, is what's actually going. That's what the Italians call substance.
Okay.
Cars, possessions, houses don't make substance of a person. What's going on between their mind, in their heart and their instincts, their soul is what makes the substance of a person.
I think also how they treat other people.
Oh, well, that's part of it, of course, isn't it? I mean, it's always say, my dad used to always say, the way you treat your mother will define how you treat people.
Yeah.
So you see kids now treating their mothers terribly. And why would we say mothers over dads? Well, because it's the mother that carries you for 9 months. Now, if that doesn't create a special bond, or the most special bond in the world, I don't know what will. And that's something that was drummed into me, and I drum it into my kids. Your mother carried you for 9 months. right?
And not to mention the birthing process.
Yeah, well, let's not go there. But 9 months. That's 9 months of the closest thing that'll ever happen to somebody. And if that doesn't breed enough to be respectful, then you're never going to treat people with respect. So to me, someone that doesn't encourage their child to be respectful to their mother is encouraging their child to never respect a person. Yeah,
I can agree with that. Wow, good chat. I'm lost for words, Phill. That's a good finisher.
Well, it's a good, honest discussion. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and your insights in areas of business, financial, family, spiritual.
Anytime.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.